Welcome to the Power in Motion podcast, the show for women who want to develop a kinder relationship with their body so you can feel healthy, happy, and confident without restricting food, doing torturous exercise, or constantly worrying about the number on the scale. I'm your host, Kim Hagel, size inclusive fitness specialist and certified non-diet health and life coach specializing in body image. This podcast is here to provide weight neutral, health at every size aligned information and coaching on sustainable habits and mindset shifts so you can feel your very best in the body you have right now. Let's lace up our runners and go for a walk while we chat. Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Joyful Movement Show. This is episode 47, and I'm your host, Kim Hagel. If you're new here, thanks for tuning in. And if you're a returning listener, thanks so much for coming back. This podcast is my passion project, and I'm on a mission to help women ditch diet culture. And one of the big ways that diet culture messes with us and keeps us thinking we're not good enough and we need to be smaller in order to be good enough is through the fitness industry. I've seen it firsthand in my clients and in my own lived experience how this messaging is keeping women stuck and feeling unmotivated, like a failure, and like they're less than if they have anything other than this made up, arbitrary, quote, perfect body. And I'm just so over it. For me, I believe the point of movement is to take care of our body so we can enjoy living on this planet for as long as possible. And when we move consistently, we're much more likely to maintain our strength, stamina, and mobility. And therefore, we're able to do more of those things that we enjoy for longer. But this messaging that there's a right and a wrong way to exercise, that it has to be done a certain way to be good enough, or it doesn't count, or the idea that if we're not losing weight, then it wasn't worth it. Well, it just keeps us focused on the wrong things and ruining our enjoyment of movement. And therefore, we don't do it. Right, so it's this vicious all or nothing cycle, and by staying on that cycle, we miss out on all the other benefits that's really what movement is all about. But of course, I didn't always think that way, so trust me when I say I get it if you're still there, thinking that exercise is for burning calories or toning and shaping. It's hard to just let that whole notion go when it's all we hear from the fitness industry. I think I've even shared how I left the fitness industry myself a couple of years ago because of that. When I kind of did my own work of accepting my body and giving up dieting and punitive exercise, I felt like I didn't belong in an industry that sole focus was on helping people, quote, helping people change their body. I really didn't feel like I fit there. And honestly, I wasn't interested in participating in it anymore because I saw how ineffective it was in my life and my clients too. So I just pulled away for a while. Now I'm back and I'm thankful to be back and sharing this message of joyful movement and health at every size and body acceptance because I know I'm not alone in what I heard and internalized from the fitness industry. And our guest on the show today is no exception. Natalie is a client who worked with me inside Right Body for Me, and she's also a fitness instructor who, after years of restrictive eating and exercising to control her body, just got to a point where she couldn't do it anymore. And I get it. I mean, I think we all reach that point, our breaking point, and realize this just isn't working for me. There's got to be another way. So, Natalie will share her story about how she found intuitive eating and gave up dieting, but then the body image struggles that came up for her as a fitness instructor who no longer conformed to the perceived ideal. This is a really open, honest, and vulnerable interview that I know will resonate for so many of you, whether you work in the fitness industry or not. That fear of weight gain or judgment, if your body changes, is real. And the way that Natalie worked through that is so inspiring. So I hope you enjoy. Hey, Natalie. I'm so excited to welcome you to the Joyful Movement Show. Welcome.
Thank you. Very happy to be here.
Yeah, well, I did explain a little bit about you and how we know each other in the introduction, but why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe specifically how you felt before we met?
Okay. So I am in my 40s. I live in Pennsylvania. I grew up in Utah in the West as the oldest of four kids. I've always loved singing and musical theater. I am married. I have 2 teenagers and 2 dogs. So I apologize if you hear the dogs.
We're dog
I
lovers
have,
here.
yes, love them, but they can be noisy. I have taught group fitness classes for over 10 years, which I love. I also like baking and a good Netflix binge.
Yeah, I think you and I are kindred spirits. I love a
I
good
love it.
baked good
Good,
myself, and I've been known to binge on Netflix from time to
good, good.
time.
So before we started working together, 2020 was like a real year of self-reflection for me. I think it was a lot of people. um, and I started practicing more yoga and actually did my 200-hour yoga teacher training. And that process, like, kind of had me doing a lot more self-examination.
Mm.
Um, I've had a negative relationship with my body since I was like 10 years old, and I've basically been restricting my diet like my entire adult life to different degrees.
Mhm.
And in 2020, I had gained some weight again, like I think a lot of us did. And I hit that point where kind of like I hit that weight where usually I would be like, all right, I got to start dieting again, got to get rid of those pounds. And I just couldn't do it. I just was exhausted. And the thought of dieting again, I was just exhausted.
Yep. I remember that feeling well myself when I had that moment. Um, and whether it's all of the added stress that the pandemic brought about, or just that you'd done the dieting so many times, who knows the reason behind the fatigue. But I think, that's a big turning point in a lot of women's lives, is when we're like, you know what it's going to take to get those pounds off, and you're like, I can't.
Yeah.
Like, I just can't put myself through this.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this a little. Like, I want to really dive into this, and also thank you for your willingness to be so vulnerable and share this part of your story with our listeners, because I think it's going to be something that so many women can relate to. And I know I have a lot of followers who listen along who are in the fitness industry themselves. And I'm sure that was a big thing for you. It was for me, being in this role and going, I choose not to try to control my body anymore. So go back. Let's go back a little bit and talk to me a little bit about some of the messages you internalized over the years that you were a fitness instructor, and what you thought you should look like, or how you thought you should behave because of your identity as a fitness instructor.
Well, I mean, for me, it goes back like even further than that. Like, the culture that I grew up in is not very diverse, and like not just racially, it's just like not diverse at all. It values a lot of sameness. I think it's getting better, but especially when I was younger, there was like a way to look, a way to act, a way to be. And that definitely spilled over into being a fitness instructor. I felt like, I needed to look a certain way. My body needed to look a certain way. I wore eyelash extensions for years, which were like expensive and time consuming, but like that was the look. And when I was younger, I actually avoided exercising. I'm one of those people who I sweat a lot and my face turns bright red. And, when you're like a teenager, nobody wants that.
Mm-hmm.
But after my kids were born, I felt a lot of pressure to fix my body. So that's kind of when I really started dieting and exercising. And one of the good things that came out of that was I first discovered Zumba. And that was so fun. I'd always loved musical theater, and like it brought that dancing element into it. And I realized that exercise could be fun.
Mm-hmm.
So I, started doing that, and I realized that I wanted to teach it after about a year. And then I just I had to get used to being sweaty. I would sometimes joke with my front row that they were in the splash zone. Like, but for sure, especially in that, where I was and in that environment, there was a way to look, a way to act. And anytime I didn't feel like um, I was meeting that standard, I was like really hard on myself. And especially like, class attendance for fitness classes fluctuates naturally, right? Like
Mhm.
we know that different times of year and just people's lives,
Mhm.
they fluctuate naturally. But anytime my class attendance would go down, I absolutely viewed that as a reflection of me,
Mm.
and would start to criticize myself and try to figure out like what I was doing wrong and what I needed to fix.
Wow. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. I'm sure you're not alone. I remember feeling the same way and thinking, yeah, watching my weight so closely and thinking for sure they can tell. And for sure they're going to be disappointed in me if they can tell, and yeah, and they're going to go want to work with somebody else, because I've mentioned it, I think, on this show before. Like, we're taught in the fitness industry, our bodies are business cards. So if you're going to be a role model to others, you certainly better look the part and behave the part. So yeah, so that's showing up as you needing to look a certain way to teach your Zumba classes, like having to control your weight. How else did the perceived need to look a certain way show up in your life?
Um, I mean, it was just like exhausting.
Yeah.
I didn't really do anything gimmicky, but after my daughter was born, that was really when I started like tracking everything that I
Mm,
ate, tracking my exercise. And the first time it worked really well, right? As it
mhm,
usually does. I dropped like 30 pounds in just a couple of months, and that created tons of positive feedback from
mhm,
everyone in my life, was like telling me how amazing I looked, and like, and then, as happens with like, as we know, like 95% of people, it just wasn't sustainable. And so as soon as I started to eat more, I would start to gain the weight back. And every time I would do it, it was harder and harder. And I would lose less and less. And
mhm.
it for sure impacted my energy. That's one of the things that was huge for me. I can remember one time in my personal life, I was like getting ready to go on a cruise. And so I was really trying to like slim down so I could look good in all those cruise pictures. And I remember one of my regulars coming up to me after a Zumba class and saying, are you okay?
Mhm.
Like, he said, I just feel like you used to have so much energy when you were leading class and now you just seem tired. And I
Yeah.
was tired, like that. I was not feeding myself and I was trying to sustain the same amount of physical activity, and it was just not possible.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, the level of excitement and energy you bring to your classes, even though you're trying to look the part, is affected, and it's still probably affecting your attendance and what people think of you. So, like, it's a no-win
Right.
situation. It's,
Exactly.
yeah. Okay, so you mentioned earlier that it was in the process of doing your yoga certification that you started to connect with yourself and your body on a deeper level. So, kind of walk me through that process and what started to shift in you and change that led you to that point of like, I'm not doing this anymore.
Um, yeah, like I said, I was just exhausted, and I was really scared of what that meant, but I just couldn't face doing it again. And because like I said, it every time I would restrict, I would lose less weight than the
Mm,
time before. And like, so I knew what it was gonna take to do that again. And
yeah.
I also really didn't want that energy dip again. I wanted to keep having the energy. My classes were going well, even though they were online at the time because of COVID. And I didn't want that energy dip. And so I reached out to a friend who was a registered dietitian, and she had started doing sessions with some people online. And when I first met with her, I told her all of that. I said, I'm tired. Um, but like I have to do something. because that's what we say, right? We have to do something. And
Yeah.
I think I said to her, like, I need to eat healthy. Like, I say that with air quotes, like, I need to eat healthy, which now I know that's just diet culture code still for losing weight. But I'm super lucky that this dietitian friend of mine suggested that I read the intuitive eating book. And she started me like down the path of gentle nutrition by working on adding healthy foods to my diet, stuff that I liked, without restricting again. And, specifically working on helping me have more energy, or things like, I knew from blood work that my cholesterol was a little bit high. And so we started adding more fiber to my diet to specifically address the cholesterol, not my weight.
Yeah.
And then that intuitive eating book was really like life-changing. Just learning to recognize diet culture and reject it has provided me that evidence that I needed to lean into feeding myself and fixing my relationship with food.
Yeah. It is life changing, as you say, and I love that she focused on what you could add in to your life. And it's funny that you're not the first one to say to me, like, I was looking for a healthy, in air quotes, way to lose weight or control my body, right? We are all thinking, like, this diet thing isn't working for me anymore. I know that I'm exhausted, I'm worn out, but there's gotta be some healthy way to control my weight and lose weight. And that's when I think I met you, is you were doing some intuitive eating. You had learned to honor your hunger and fullness and the satisfaction. You were giving your body the nutrition that it needed in a gentle way. But you were coming around to the idea that eating intuitively is not a guarantee for weight loss.
Yeah.
And then that's a whole other can of worms that has to
Yeah.
get dealt with, is like, oh, okay. So if I'm going to treat my body with love and respect and give it what it needs, I also have to like be okay with my body landing where it lands.
Yep.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but you were not okay with that at the moment that we met.
Yeah, totally. I have a lot of internalized fat phobia.
Yeah.
Just I felt like if I stopped dieting, that I would just get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger with like no idea of when it would stop. I felt like I wouldn't be able to exercise anymore. I felt like if my body got bigger, that I would no longer be able to teach my fitness classes because I wouldn't have enough. And like I thought I was going to turn into like this big person who didn't move.
Yeah.
And I also, I totally thought that people would judge me, both in my regular life and as a fitness instructor. I thought that people would be less likely to want to be around me if I wasn't as cute. Like, just
Yeah.
being honest.
No, and I mean, say it out loud, because guaranteed people have thought this inside their head, and if they haven't, well, they're lying. Because
Yeah.
it's true. Like, weight stigma is a real thing. The world is not kind to the people in large bodies. So it's only natural that we would fear gaining weight because we don't want to face the stigma that tends to happen. And then the fear that you would not be able to do the things that you like to do as far as movement goes. We really believe as a society that if we're in a larger body, that's the reason why we have, well, any problem, basically, but especially when it comes to movement. Like, if you're not strong or you're not fast or your mobility, it's because of your weight, which you're learning is untrue. It's a false stereotype. But where do you think that belief came from? And I mean, I'm sure it's more than just one thing.
Yeah, no, I mean, part of the work that I have done with you is like taking that stuff and bringing it down to what the core belief is behind it. And I think that core belief is that I didn't feel like I deserved to be loved and valued just for being me. Like, I really believed that a huge part of the value of me as a person had to do with how I looked.
Mhm.
And that's not something that I would have like said. Do you know what I mean? Like if you had asked me like, how important is the way that you look? Like I know the answer is, oh, that's not important, right? But internally,
Yeah.
there absolutely was that core belief that people would love me less
Yeah.
if I didn't look the way I thought that I should look.
Yeah. And that's where thought work is so important because, yeah, we all say those things on the surface level. And then we have this fear, like this true fear of weight gain and all of the things that might happen. And we don't want to look at the true belief behind that. Like, wait, I do have a belief that people will think less of me or judge me if I gain weight. And that must mean that I don't think I'm worthy or valuable as a human being. Oh, it actually is about appearance. Like, that's why it's important to dig below the surface. So you did that. You dug into those fears, you challenged those core beliefs, and you began to do the work of seeing your value and your worth outside of your appearance. Tell me a little bit about what that was like.
Um, some of the key points for me were learning about the idea of body neutrality.
Mm,
I we've all seen the idea of like positive affirmations, right? And just like say you love your body and you'll love your body.
mhm.
We hear that, but to me that was not helpful at all. And body neutrality is the idea that like I can use this body as a tool and I can appreciate this body as a tool and what it does for me, and I don't necessarily have to love the way that it looks. Like that doesn't have to be a goal of mine, and that was really surprising for me. Instead of starting with like I love my body, I needed to dial it way back to something more basic, like it is possible for me to feel neutral about my body.
Yeah.
Just something super basic.
Mhm.
And then the one thing that I picked up from you that I use all the time and I love is my weight is the least interesting thing about me.
Mhm.
I remind myself of that all the time when those thoughts start to creep in. My weight is the least interesting thing about me. And you know one of the exercises we did was like think about someone that you love, your sister, your best friend. Think about if they came to you and said like, oh, I've gained some weight, like these things, like you would never be cruel to them and say, yeah, like I don't like you anymore.
Yep,
You wouldn't,
you're
like,
disgusting.
because their weight is the least interesting thing about them.
Hmm.
And when you can apply that internally, like there's just so much more to offer that has nothing to do with how you look.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that you've started to internalize those, well, not started to, that you have internalized those beliefs for yourself, because I often say, like, this is why I do what I do, because I see that in others, right? I see
Yeah.
that in you, and I see all the potential and all the beauty and all the gifts that you have to offer the world that are being squashed by these like self-deprecating beliefs about not being good enough, right? And if we weren't spending so much time obsessing about our body and how we looked and all of that, like what else could we do in the world? So we'll talk about some of the things that you've been doing in the world in just a second, but I want to talk about that other fear. You had a real fear that if you allowed your body to land where it might, and in your case that did result in a bit of weight gain, that would affect your fitness level and you wouldn't be able to continue teaching fitness classes because you wouldn't be able to keep up. So what actually happened there?
I mean, honestly, if anything, like I have more energy because I'm feeding myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not like I pay attention to what I need to feed myself to be able to teach those classes and give that to other people. And so if anything, I honestly have more energy.
Mm-hmm.
um this, all of this self-reflection has definitely impacted how I choose to move my body, because I'm no longer just focused on burning the highest number of calories.
Yeah.
I can remember an experience when my kids were small and we went on a family hike, and I remember getting, this is like embarrassing to even admit, but I remember getting super frustrated that my kids wouldn't move faster, because I had like a calorie goal in mind that I needed to
Yeah.
like hit on this hike, and my kids were not going fast enough, and I was not going to burn enough calories. And now, like, letting go of that, the calorie burning being the primary idea, has just really opened me up to being able to do more of the things that I truly love. Things
Mm-hmm.
like yoga, things like weightlifting, that really feel good to me and that feed my soul.
Mm.
And I absolutely can still do that. I'm still teaching the same number of classes a week. I'm still providing quality content to the people who come to my class. um, and it really has not had the negative impacts I feared that it would.
Right. You're still able to do everything that you've ever been able to. And in fact, you've been
Yep.
able to round out your movement practice by adding in some of those other things, the yoga and the weightlifting that maybe you weren't doing before because it doesn't burn as much calories.
Yep.
So, improving your strength, improving your flexibility while also getting your heart rate up and all of that stuff sounds very balanced. And talk to me about your teaching style. Have there been any changes to how you show up at class as an instructor as a result of this work?
I think the biggest change has been how I talk to my class participants.
Mhm.
Um, you're never now going to hear me say things like "no pain, no gain," or like, do this for the next 60 seconds and earn a piece of cake. Like, you're not going to hear those things from me. You're going to hear things like, take a minute to notice how you feel today and think about how you want to feel at the end of the workout. How can you get there? And I also give tons of options in my
Mm.
class. I give options on how to make things easier, on how to make things harder. Like, I
Mhm.
just make an effort to be really inclusive,
Mhm.
so that, based on, not even just anyone's overall fitness level, but just how they feel when they wake up that day and come to class, there are options for them to be able to get the kind of workout that they need.
Yeah. And what about for yourself? Like I know in my past teaching fitness classes, like I would always do the high intensity option because like I felt like that was expected of me, first of all. And secondly, like I had to be the role model to, I had to go high or nobody else would. And I'm curious to hear your side of that and how that's changed. Like what options do you choose for yourself now as an instructor?
No, I feel much more free to do the same for myself, to think about how I'm feeling and to go with what I feel that day. If we're doing, maybe a cardio burst in class, I'm going to show the options.
Hmm.
I want those who feel like they want that high intensity, high impact option. So I'm going to show it to them. But if I'm tired that day, I have no problem backing off and doing the more low intensity option with my class. And um, I was a little worried, especially my in-person classes in a gym environment. I was a little bit worried that maybe those hardcore folks would not like my class as much. But I haven't found that at all. They're still showing up every day. They're still coming. They're still giving me a big smile and saying thanks for class. And yeah.
Yeah, because I think, my experience anyways is it's the energy you bring to the room that is what attracts people to your class, right? It's the things that you say and the spirit that you bring and giving that permission to bring the intensity or do what works for you, but not that you have to do it yourself. In fact, I think that can make things a little inaccessible to some people too, thinking that like she never slows down, like she just go 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 all the time. I can never be like that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, has it got you thinking about the fitness industry on a broader level? Is there a message or some food for thought that you would share with other fitness instructors or the fitness industry?
I mean, I think that people need to know that their value comes from how they make people feel, not from what they look like. You know,
Hmm.
when I was going through all of this, I thought back to like some of my past fitness instructors, and the ones who I loved were the ones who were genuine, vulnerable, funny, welcoming, that made me feel something,
Mhm.
and made me feel welcome, as opposed to what they look like. Like I don't care what they look like. And it's funny when I think about how much pressure I put on myself
Mhm.
to need to look a certain way when I absolutely didn't apply that to other people.
Yeah,
And I think we all need to give ourselves that grace.
such a good point. Yep. Extend the same grace that we would to others to ourselves. So, what are you celebrating about yourself these days?
Let's see. I'm celebrating the space that I've created in my brain.
Oh, such a big thing.
I used to spend so much time thinking about food, worrying about what I was going to eat, berating myself if I made a wrong choice, calculating calories all the time.
Mhm.
And I don't do that anymore. And that, I'm not kidding, that feels like a miracle to me.
Mhm. What else
Just
are
that
you
I
able
have,
to spend your energy on? What else?
I'm doing more singing.
Nice.
I am able to throw myself into time in the kitchen. I love cooking and baking. I'm able to be more present with the
Mhm.
people in my life. My brain's not off thinking about that and worrying about that, and I'm able to really be more present. I started doing some regular meditation in the morning, just
Mhm.
like a few minutes at a time, and that feels like so grounding. And it's been great. And I'll say I'm sleeping better too.
Really?
I don't know exactly what to attribute to that, but I'm sleeping better than I have in a long time.
That's amazing. And maybe it's just the reduced stress that you're feeling from not being so obsessed.
Yeah.
Those are great things to celebrate. I'm excited for you. So, one more question, and it's a question that I ask everybody who comes on the show. And maybe your answer to this will have changed over the last few months or year, but what does joyful movement mean to you?
Joyful movement to me means doing something that feels good that day. It means choice and variety,
Mm.
and it means creating energy instead of just always driving myself into the ground.
Oh, that is such a good statement. I hope everybody writes that down. Creating energy. Yeah. Like how many times in my past did I feel so depleted of energy after a movement session where, yeah, if you can flip that to how can I create energy for myself, you move in a whole other way. Is there anything else that's on your heart to share today, Natalie?
Just that this is a journey, like I still have my good days and my bad days, but having the tools in my toolbox to deal with the bad days
Mhm.
is what keeps me going. And just seeing the success that I've had in really freeing up that energy and that space in my life has been worth every little bit.
Hmm. So wise, so wise. Well, I am so grateful that you took the time to share with our audience and be so open and vulnerable and honest with everything that you've experienced. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Natalie.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been great to talk through it, and I really appreciate all the things you have helped me with. It's been huge.
Well, it's my pleasure.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode. I love Natalie's quote that her weight is the least interesting thing about her. I really hope you let that one sink in. I know that fear of weight gain or that fear of judgment is a real thing, and I want you to know that I'm here to help you work through that.
Those are the types of things that we talk about in greater detail inside my Facebook community. We've got a really supportive group of women all figuring this out together. And each week I go live and answer your questions and really dig into the nitty gritty on these topics that I talk about in the show. So I encourage you to join us there to carry on these conversations. The link for the group, it's called the Joyful Movement Community, is in the show notes, or you can also just message me on social media and I will send the link over for you and welcome you into our community. I look forward to chatting with you again next Monday when the next episode airs. Heartfelt request that if you are finding value in these episodes, to please head on over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating or review. I'm not asking out of vanity. The reason I ask is because the higher our show rates, the more it gets seen. So the more women who need to hear this message get to hear it. So that's it for today, my friends. Thank you so much for being here. Be well, and here's to your radiant vitality.
Thanks for tuning into the Power in Motion podcast today. If you love what you're learning here, then I invite you to take the next step of embodying these concepts into your own life so that you can live your healthiest, happiest life and never again feel held back by your body. Coaching is the fastest, most efficient pathway to taking what you know in your head to actually applying it and seeing results. Whether you're looking to make changes around movement, food, body image, or all three, I'm here to help you nurture a kind, respectful, and trusting relationship with your body so you can feel your very best. Click the link in the show notes to book a free consultation, and together we'll uncover what's getting in the way of you having the results you want. You'll leave this call knowing exactly what you need to work on, and together we'll explore whether one of my coaching offers is a good fit for you. I can't wait to meet you.